Welcome to the Mike White Podcast, where I, Mike White, share my conversations and book reviews through my journey to learn all that goes on in this amazing world. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
All right, welcome to the podcast. Today is a year in review for the Mike White Podcast. So I started this around August of 2022, and I was doing one once a week and had some really interesting people on so far, and I wanted to recap that on today's episode. So I'll do one clip from each of the previous episodes and my thoughts on why I chose it. It's not necessarily the clip that got the most views, but just ones I think are especially important. So we'll start off with episode 1. And episode 1, I interviewed my dad, Mike White Sr. He is a retired fighter pilot, and so he flew F-15s, F-117s. He's an instructor pilot for a while on the, I think it's T-38. I'm not sure there, but got his take on cleanliness and standards and the importance of maintaining a standard and not letting it ebb and flow based on inspections or things like that. So here's the first clip.
But always at work, my areas that I worked was spotless, and I think that's because I really didn't like the preparing for inspection type attitude. People, the boss is coming in, we got to clean this place up. I always thought that anybody should be able to come in anytime, and that's just the way it is. So I think that was my mindset, is keeping it so no matter who comes in, it looks good.
Yeah, I definitely found that in the Navy. That was not good for morale. Like the sailors really hated cleaning for the inspection, and it's just for the inspection, and then they, the standards slip again. But the workup and the emphasis, and then you kind of, I don't know, it kind of goes into integrity for me. Like if it's important, it's important, and you should always have it that way.
100%. And people think that they would be miserable by keeping it clean all the time. As opposite, you have pride in keeping it clean. So if the leader would maintain that this is how we're going to keep. I mean, I went to extremes. I always thought the base commander should ride around the base, and if anything wasn't perfect, he should be ashamed. And I really think each base, in theory, if you had enough pride, could look like the Truman Show or whatever utopia as far as cleanliness. If you can clean your office, then you can clean the hallway to your office, then you can clean the parking lot. And I mean, as long as somebody owns it, the area that they're responsible for, and there's plenty of people to own the areas, you can keep the whole base awesome. I think I never was a base commander, but the areas that I was in charge of, I tried to keep them as clean as possible.
And now we get into clip number 2, episode 2. We had Clark Blunt on the podcast. Clark was my neighbor growing up. He's the reason I got into cross-country running in high school. I just wanted to run with my friend and, have a good time, and ended up being really beneficial in the long run. And Clark ended up running at Texas Tech, a cross-country track. I know he did the steeplechase, and now he is a mechanical engineer for Sherwin-Williams. And in his episode, we were talking about Lubbock, Texas, and he describes the time when he gave someone a ride in Lubbock. So hope y'all enjoy.
Do you want me to share a quick story about Lubbock, Texas?
Oh yeah, please.
You want this? It's going to be my best story. Are you ready for it?
Lubbock needs it. Lubbock needs it. It needs some good PR.
You want a good? Oh, this isn't going to be a good one for Lubbock.
Okay.
You want that? It's up to you.
Yeah. Send it.
All right. So I remember one day I was getting a Subway sandwich. Have I told you this story?
No.
One time I was getting a Subway sandwich, and I was walking back. I remember I got in my Land Rover. It was pretty cool. It's an LR2.
Oh, yeah.
And so I open up my driver door. I throw my sandwich in the passenger seat, and I plop down. And I reach over to grab my belt, or the seat belt. And so I grab that, and then while I'm turned, I hear the passenger door open. And in my head, I was like, not a chance that's mine. Or I don't know that I could even process anything. But I come back with the seatbelt, and there's like the largest man that I've ever seen in my life, seated, like with his head on the ceiling of the Land Rover. And he goes, "I need a ride." And I naturally just go, "Absolutely. Where are we headed?" And so without hesitation, I mean, I didn't look, I didn't check, and we were on the busiest street in Lubbock. I just grab the shift and I throw it in reverse, and I just back right on up into the busy street, and I just start talking. Immediately, I'm like, I gotta talk to this guy so he doesn't kill me at the end of this drive.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to him, and I'm saying, "Hey, man, I'm so glad I can pick you up." I'm like, "Yeah, it's super hot outside. Can't believe it. Anybody would even let you walk." And so I'm talking, but in the back of my head, I'm just thinking, I'm like, how do I get out of this? And he's barking orders at me. He's like, "Turn here, get on the highway." And so internally, I'm freaking out because I think I was just like a sophomore in college. And so I'm just kind of new to the whole world of being alone. And I'm just driving, freaking out, thinking, how do I get out of this? And he's still yelling at me. And then all of a sudden, it comes to me. I go, "All right, if there's one person I can talk to, it's my roommate." I'm like, "This is my best friend. If I tell him something and it's kind of cryptic and he knows something's off, at least if I don't come home tonight, he'll call the police." And so I go, I got to make a call. And so I got my old roommate on speed dial, and I'm calling up Wyatt Keeler. And to this day, I still don't know why this guy did this, but he was like, "No phone calls." And he like yells at me, and I already had it going. And so I'm sitting there, and each ring, I was like, if he doesn't answer, I don't know what I'm going to do. Each ring, I'm just kind of getting a little bit more anxious. And then he picks up, and he's like, "What?" And I go, "Oh, hey, Wyatt. I just want to give you a quick call. I just want to let you know I'm going to be late for the meeting." And he goes, "What? What are you talking about?" And I go, I saw a friend on the side of the road, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm going to be late for the meeting."
And is this guy next to you yelling no phone calls? Or is
He's
that
still
just
barking.
before?
He's barking orders at me louder than ever. He's telling me to get off, and I'm like making all these turns, and my brain is not even focused on that. I was just doing whatever he was telling me, and I was like, but he can't kill me if I'm on the phone. And so I was just talking, and this guy is angry, and I'm driving him somewhere, and it is really hot. And Wyatt hangs up on me, and I go, "Well, shoot, that was my one lifeline. I don't think I can just pull that one off again." So for the remainder of that ride, I pretend I'm on the phone with Wyatt, and I'm making up conversation. I'm like, "That workout sure was hard." I'm like, "It's so hot outside. I like Blue Powerade." And so we're driving, and eventually he tells me, he's like, "Turn into this neighborhood." And it is like, I ran through some bad parts of Lubbock, but this part I was like, man, this one's the rough one. And I turned in there, and I'm sure it's all psychological, but I remember I pulled in, and it was like, as I was pulling into the neighborhood, it was like in the movies. Overcast, just all the sun came in. And I'm like, man, I'm like, this is it. I'm like, this is it. This is going to be fine. I'm like, best case scenario, I just lose my car. And so I'm driving, and then he yells. I'm still pretending I'm on the phone. He goes, "Stop." So I like, you know how you slam on the brakes? And so
Yeah.
and we came back, and he just opens the door, and he takes a step out. He's got one leg on the sidewalk and one leg in my car. And he turns around and he goes, "I need $20 and a lighter." And I don't know what came over me here, but I went, "No, you get out of here." I yelled that, and he slams the door, and he takes off dead, like Forrest Gump sprint down the street. And so in my head, I'm like, his buddy is across the street ready to shoot me. And so I literally peel out of there, and I drive as fast as I can up until I get to the very first stop sign. And I remember just putting my hands on my head and going, "What just happened?" And so I sat there for a little while. And then I think the best part of the story is I finally got back to my apartment, and Wyatt's standing there with his backpack, and he's like, "What meeting am I late for? And I was like, no, no. From now on, you got to know if I
Backup plan.
like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I got
You've been
kidding.
dead. They would probably found you a week later once you stopped showing up to practice, or
Yeah, yeah, maybe.
Gosh.
Why
So
am
now
I
do you
still
do like
looking for
a
the meeting?
you do a double take now? Anytime you get in your car, make sure no one's on the other side about to
There was
hop in.
there was a long time where I made sure that as soon as I stepped in that car, I locked those doors. It was that one sat with me for a while.
All right, so episode 3, we had submariner Travis Smith on the show, and this was timely because just a few weeks before that episode, we recorded that episode, there was a article on LinkedIn that got a lot of shares. It was pretty popular. It was in the U.S. Naval Institute magazine, and it was a submariner saying that in order to fix the retention problem for submarine officers, they should, one aspect is extending the minimum service obligation. And both Travis and I were very much against this, so here's just a small portion of our response to that.
I wouldn't have done it though if there's like a 10-year commitment. I wasn't
me
sure
either.
I wanted to be a submarine officer. I mean, I looked pretty
Yeah.
cool and I was ready to do 20 if I really enjoyed it. But
Yeah, that similar thing for me. I joined with the intention of doing 20 because I was 20 at the time that I started NUPOC. I was like, holy cow, I could be retired by the time I'm 40. Easy day. So I think that guy is just so disconnected from what actually happens. It's just been too long or whatever. Because yeah, I'm in the same boat. I wouldn't have joined if I had to do it for 10 years. 5 years, I was like, sure, I could do that easy. Because he's talking about like, oh, people are just so far from retirement that we can't trap them in with their retirement. And it's like, no, that's bullshit, because I'll be at 7 years by the time I'm done with my short tour, which is like pretty much 10 years at the same time, like almost at the hump, and I'm still going to choose to get out and not go be a department head.
All right, so episode 4, I had my friend Vyom Joshi. So we both were at the University of Texas studying electrical engineering at the same time. We were in the same study group, and he is a practicing electrical engineer, but is also a value investor. So in this clip, Vyom talks about the 3 biggest ideas for value investing.
There are three biggest ideas that every value investor has. The first is, like I briefly mentioned, where you think about stocks as businesses. They're not something that's floating around on your on the ticker screen. Google may still be a super valuable company, even though it's down 33% or whatever it may be. It hasn't lost its moat. So thinking about the thought process that just because something is down doesn't mean that the business is now bad. In fact, it's cheap and it's a good time to buy because you're getting it at a discount. Second one is always having margin of safety is the other thought process that value investors have. Because when you buy something as a value investor, you always have to take into account that what's my downside? How much am I protected? Last one is Mr. Market. You know, the stock prices are going to go up and down, and Mr. Market, who is the stock market, is there to serve you and not to instruct you.
All right, so episode 5, I switched it up a little bit. Didn't do an interview podcast, but did a book review, and I plan on doing more of these in the future. I only did one in 2022, but this first one was Vinnie Tortorich's book, Fitness Confidential. And Vinnie Tortorich is the creator of, he owns the trademark for NSNG, so no sugars, no grains. And so he was a trainer in Hollywood and was very successful in just preaching that simple approach of cutting out sugars and grains and not worrying about fats and proteins or meat or any of that. So in this clip, I talk about how I think it's crazy. People think like whole grains are good for you, but other grains are not. Very controversial. Hope y'all enjoy. Myth: whole grains are good for you. Your liver does not care if you're eating Wonder Bread or 100% whole wheat. You may have a little more of a complex carb response rather than like a spike, but they're both sugar and both bad. All right, guys, if you're feeling up for it, I highly recommend cutting out those sugars and grains, doing it for a couple of weeks, and at least just seeing how you feel after that, and go from there. But next up, so episode 6, I had Eddie Ta, Lieutenant Eddie Ta, and he was calling in from Misawa, Japan. We were both on board the USS West Virginia there in Kings Bay, Georgia. And so Eddie talks about Navy Nuclear Power School, and he's one of those guys, super studious and always did well in academics. And he comes to Charleston, South Carolina for power school and just gets hit hit by a cement truck with the difficulty and the struggles. And he talks about how he persevered through that. Y'all enjoy.
I was one of the 2 people in my class that failed the first exam. It was reactor plant systems, which is they give you, I think 5 days to memorize 100 pages worth of notes. And the exam is only an hour long, and you're expected to spit out everything an hour. And I don't think if you put your pencil down for a single second, you're not going to finish the exam. And,
I had so many blank questions on that exam.
Yeah, so I failed that exam. That was the first exam, and I was like, oh man, the rest of power school is gonna be like this. I'm not going to make it.
There's some people that dominate it too. Some of those guys, even RPS, the first exam that's supposed to be kind of soul crushing, they dominate it. So there's some
that's what
brains.
got me. These people are studying way less than I am, and their grades are so much better. I'm probably doing something wrong. And I did kind of feel really, I don't want to say depressed because that's a big no-no, but I was really down for most of it.
Yeah, guys, Navy Nuclear Power School is no joke. A lot of memorizing and doing it very quickly. So shout out to anyone that's there right now going through the grind. It does have an end date, so it's only so long, and hopefully you make it through. But next up, we have episode 7, where I headed out to Dallas, Texas, and I interviewed Austin and Carolina Martin. And so I know Austin Martin from club baseball at UT, and he ended up going into personal training, both he and his wife. And we talk about why they went into personal training when he is qualified to do so many other things. He's got a great degree from the University of Texas, and he realized that training is what truly made him happy, provided enough income for him and his wife to live comfortably, and that's the path they chose and how they're very happy about it. So I think it's an important concept of money not being everything and money not providing happiness. It's not as easy as just make more money and get happier. Hope y'all enjoy. I joined the Navy and I started getting paid well, and it's oh, this is nice, but it's not worth all this time to have this money. Money can only go so far. It's nice if you have food, shelter, clothing, and then after that, I'd rather actually do stuff I want to do rather than just stack cash.
Well, that's the thing is, when I was working there, I realized I had managed to get a full load of clients. And so I was making a full-time income. Mm-hmm. And you extrapolate for the whole year. I was doing this for a couple of months, and you look at the whole year and you go, I can live on this. Why am I going to do something that I don't enjoy doing? I can live on this. She was going to do the same thing. Would have been 2 incomes, and
definitely.
Yeah, you make that realization. And I was lucky enough to do that first, and to do that before I started my full-time job, because once you start making more money, it's so hard to go backwards.
You get used to it.
You get used to it, and you think, there's no way I can make less than that.
All right, guys, so episode 8, I have my cousin Tegan White. She is a nurse and just started nursing. Been at the hospital for less than a year, but she's in the operating room, and we go through all her path to nursing and stories so far. So here's a particularly gruesome one that I wanted to share. This is why I would not be a good nurse, because I would not handle this stuff well. Oh. So you're taking the organs out of the people that have died? Mm-hmm. Jesus. Mm-hmm. How did you? I haven't even seen a dead person. I don't want to see a dead person, and I would think that would mess me up. I don't know. Are you used to it now, or does it?
Oh, yeah.
Does it haunt you at night?
No.
But blood in the guts, Did you have any concerns going in, and then now you're fine?
It's kind of funny because I remember you see it all on TV, like Grey's Anatomy, things like that. You see these crazy.
Yeah.
And so I remember seeing stuff on TV and be like, ugh, like that's gross. Like I can't look at that. And then I see it in real life and I'm like, we do an amputation and I'm wheeling the leg off to pathology. Then I'm like, go eat lunch. Like it's just, it unfazes me now.
All right, guys, hopefully you're no longer thinking about body parts and we can move on to episode 9 where Travis Smith, my dad, and myself discussed the FTX debacle. And this scams or big case of fraud in the cryptocurrency space, big exchange, going bankrupt, doing shady things. And here's the takeaway from that episode. Yeah, and I just hope that this event maybe makes people look into crypto or the people that were in crypto and all the shit coins to truly realize the difference between a centralized token and the truly decentralized token that Bitcoin is and the value it provides.
Yeah, like I referenced earlier, I think this is definitely the .com bubble burst per se for crypto, except I thought a lot of the coin-based projects would go under before some of the exchanges went under. And that was just my thought process. Just because with all the liquidity drying up, all those coins that were, basically buying back their own tokens to provide like artificial inflation of their price, it would run out of, debt to be able to fuel some of that growth.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I thought those would be the first ones to go, but it turns out they were able to, cut some of their burn rates and survive a little bit longer.
Yeah, ultimately, I think as ugly and as sad as that was for FTX, losing so many funds, it was better now than years down the road. It could have been even worse. So I'm a big proponent of Bitcoin, not investment advice, but if you haven't looked into it, I would highly recommend looking into it and deciding for yourself if you think it may be a good store of value or digital gold, as some people say it is. But next up, so we have my episode with Clark Blunt. This is where we decided we're going to run a marathon in 2023. And from this, we've started a weekly podcast as well where we outline the training plan for the week and then we recap what we did the week before, how we're feeling. So if anyone wants to follow along on our path to the marathon, they can. So Clark's trying to qualify for the Boston, and then I'm just trying to get faster. So 7:30 average pace is my initial goal, and then I think the next year I want to qualify for the Boston. But who knows? Maybe my training will go well enough and I'll be able to qualify this year. So here's a clip from that episode. I wanted to make sure we cover what exactly are your goals for this. Is it just qualify for the Boston? Like, so that time, that kind of 3-hour time?
Yeah. And so I looked it up. And so the qualifying time, I think COVID gave people an opportunity to really kind of buckle down and giving them that year to not focus on racing, but focus on getting better. I think it's elevated the times. And so the time is kind of escalated. So right now the time has improved to 2 hours and I think 50 minutes. And I think that's a 6:50 pace. And so I think that's going to be what I'm going to be targeting. So whenever I'm running my tempo runs, that's the pace that I'm going to be running at. So I'll run my tempo at my race pace, which is going to be that 6:50.
And where are you at right now, would you say? Like if you had to run a marathon tomorrow, what pace would you shoot for?
Ooh, I'd be dismal. I'd probably, it'd be tough. I'd really have to gut it out. Maybe 8:30 to 9-minute pace. It'd be a pitiful sight. I I have not seriously ran other than with my dog and like occasionally with my brother, but just a couple of times. So in quite some time since I lived in Nevada actually. So it'd be pretty slow.
Yeah, you're trying to knock down about 2 minutes from your current pace to the goal to qualify for Boston.
Yeah.
And if I had to run one tomorrow, I would probably conservatively say like 11, 12 minutes. Just because, gosh, I did a 12-hour walk a couple weeks ago, and it messed me up. Like it was after like I was kind of working out pretty hard and did a long run, and then the next day I'm going to walk for 12 hours, no phone, just see the city. And I heard about it on the Adam Carolla show, and so I wanted to try it out. And like 1 hour into it, I feel like I pull the back of my knee, and I'm hobbling the whole way. I finished that. The next day, I'm like dehydrated by the end of the day. I'm sore for like 2 days straight, and that's just walking this is like 28 miles or so, just walking over a marathon. So I feel like I got a way to go, but probably conservatively maybe 11, 12 minute pace.
Yeah, I think I don't know that you can compare that. I think walking and running are two very different worlds, but I think 12-minute pace is pretty reasonable, and I think you're going to see, if you do this right, if you ease into it, I think you're going to see a lot of benefits from it. And then I guess, I think running is important so that you get that mileage under you, but I think it's now that we're going to have to start focusing on what are we eating, right? What is it that's driving us as far as the fuel that we're putting in ourselves? So I think it's going to have to be more than just, hey, let's get some mileage in. It's going to have to be something more than that too.
So that leads me to my two other goals. So the pace goal I didn't say, but I want to get a 7:30 pace. And then for my other goal is I'm going to do this with no sugar, no grains approach. So doing it fat adapted.
All right, let's do it. Have you tried working out under those conditions yet?
Oh yeah, I love it. I feel so much better. It just gets a little I'll have to plan out what I want to bring with me on race day. So maybe like some olives or some, they sell those ultra salts, little salt supplements. I might bring some of those, and I got to do some research, but I plan to do it fat adapted. Right. Next up, we have Satoshi's Gulch. So I met Luke at a Bitcoin meetup in Austin, and he had on his Satoshi's Gulch shirt. And if you know me, I love Ayn Rand and her novels and nonfiction as well. So I had to get one of those, of course, and big into Bitcoin, of the freedom aspect of it, the decentralized aspect of it. I really don't think there's any other cryptocurrency that compares. So if you haven't listened to this episode, I highly recommend you do so. And if you ever want to talk Bitcoin, I'd love to talk about it. Help me explain my thoughts better and more coherently. And maybe I'm wrong, right? So who knows? But here's a clip from my episode with Satoshi's Gulch. Any final thoughts on Bitcoin, or for especially like the newbies out there that maybe this is their first time hearing about it?
It's definitely worth looking into. You don't necessarily have to go as deep as I went, or as Mike, you have gone, but it's certainly worth looking at. And if you care about saving at all, look at it like a savings technology. If you're a techie person, maybe you look at it because of how interesting it is tech-wise. If you were a gold bug, you should definitely take a look at it. It's digital gold, except 1,000 times better. If you're just not a big fan of the state and you're an Ayn Rand fan, you really enjoyed Atlas Shrugged, you should take a look at it as a solution that is similar to the solution that she provided in that story. Is a way to opt out of a crumbling society is to go back to sound money and free markets. And Bitcoin is the freest market in the world. And if you like freedom, Bitcoin is for you. So Bitcoin's for everybody.
Bitcoin truly is for everybody, but you have to see it for yourself. So Don't take my word for it. Do some research and decide for yourself. Next up, we have Jamie Salgado. So he's LS1 Salgado. We were on the same submarine in Kings Bay, and he describes how submariners shower on board. And this is a disclaimer here. This is how we should shower. There are many sailors that prefer what we call the Hollywood style, where they take a nice, long, wasteful shower. So if you want to try a submarine shower, this is how you do it. It's much better than a Hollywood shower. Showers on submarines. What's a submarine shower?
A submarine shower is you walk in the shower, you turn it on, get wet, right? You just get your body wet, turn the water off, get your loofah, you wash your body with no water, right? No water running. You wash your body, you do your shampoo, right? And then you turn the water on and quickly rinse off, turn the water back off, and you're done. And then you have to, we have squeegees. So you have to get a squeegee and wipe down the walls of the shower when you're done as a courtesy, because keep it clean. It was clean the way you walked in there, and you're going to keep it clean when you leave for the next person. So that's a submarine shower. It literally take about 5 minutes.
All right, guys. Hopefully you try that tonight. Nice and quick. Save some water, save some money, and save some time. So there's really no downside. But next up, we have the last episode of 2022. I had Coach Randy Fichtner. He's the former offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And sat down with Randy for almost 2 hours talking about his path to the Steelers. And he had a bunch of good stories, was an awesome guest. And this is one story where he recounts his call from Mike Tomlin when Mike Tomlin found out that he got hired to be the head coach for the Steelers.
I have a home visit that night in Covington, Tennessee. And it's about an hour drive from me from where I was living in Memphis. I told Jennifer, I'm laying down. I'm going to take a nap. The NFL game was on. The afternoon game was on. And I literally remember sleeping on the couch and getting up because I told her I have to be out of here by like 6 o'clock. I mean, I got to be there by 7:30. So I get up, kind of getting ready, making sure I put a different shirt on, whatever. And I looked at my phone and I had 2 voicemails and some texts. So I hit the first voicemail, and all it was Mike Tomlin saying, I got the job, and so do you. So I put it on speaker, and I held it up with Jennifer in the kitchen, and the kids were all young, and they were sitting around the kitchen table. And she looked at me, and she started crying. And the kids started crying because they thought something was wrong. They didn't know that it was the happy tears, that it was like, wow. And that was that moment. I got the job, and so do you.
I got the job, and so do you. What a cool call. All right, guys, and that's going to call it for the year in review. Thank you to all the listeners. Really honored to have as many people listening as I do. I know this is really just a passion project for me that didn't have a ton of expectations going into it, but after just a few weeks, I've really enjoyed it and had some great conversations with people, learned a lot, made myself uncomfortable because this is definitely not, if you know me, I do not like to talk a lot. So being on a podcast is definitely outside my comfort zone, but I plan to continue it to 2023. Next up, I'm going to do a show about goals and New Year's resolution type stuff. And then we'll get back into the interviews and some book reviews. So I hope you all had a great holiday season, a happy new year, got time to spend with family, reflect on 2022, what went well, what you want to improve on, and that you are ready to get after it in 2023. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Mike White Podcast. Be sure to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Mike White Pod and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Y'all have a great day.